We are fortunate to be joined this afternoon by David, Kat, and Tony, and I want to pass it to them to introduce themselves. I think they can do a better job introducing themselves than I could. So, Tony, I will give it away to you first to go ahead and introduce yourself. You're the lucky first one.
Yay. I love being the first one that gets to introduce myself. Good afternoon. I'm Tony Lopez. I'm the Deputy Director of Community Violence Reduction for the Office of Public Health and Safety with the City of Indianapolis. I oversee the community piece when it comes to the gun violence reduction strategy that the city has. We call that Indy Peace. You can find that at indypeace.org. It talks about all the stuff that we do and the work that we're doing when it comes to violence reduction here in the city of Indianapolis. A little background about me. I'm a native of Indianapolis, so born and raised here in Indianapolis. Went away for college, went to Ball State. I'm a criminal justice major, and then I started working for the state for about 5 years doing parole and being a corrections officer for a little bit. And then I started working in the nonprofit realm, doing reentry type work. And so working with our reentry population and helping individuals, and then started working for the city back in 2020, and then moved into the deputy director role as of 2022, when we saw ARPA funding given to our city to then start up our gun violence reduction strategy, and have been doing that ever since.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony, for the introduction here. Kat, you're next up on my view here. So I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Catlin Gray. I am a planner for data and evaluation at the City of Oakland's Department of Violence Prevention. And I have also worked in this field for a little over 10 years. I used to be a case manager and program coordinator with folks coming out of prison and foster and probation youth, and have transitioned more to the policy and research side, and worked for a research and evaluation firm and some other cities here in the Bay Area. I'm also from the Bay Area, although I had a brief stint in Chicago, which I know some other folks on the call are here from. And yes, we at the Department of Violence Prevention, and I'll talk more about this when we get into it, but we are one of the only departments of violence prevention in the country, which is really special. Most offices of violence prevention are like offices within departments, and so that allows us to have a better line of communication to the city administrator and to city leadership. And we have been using Apricot for a few years now, and I'm excited to talk about it more.
So thank you, Kat, for your introduction as well. And then we have last but not least, but I guess last, David, I want to pass it to you to introduce yourself.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and sorry that I'm not yet on camera, running to and fro, but really happy to be with you all, and then I'll introduce myself and then start this discussion. I'm David Muhammad. I'm the Executive Director of the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, and we're based in Oakland, California, but we work throughout the United States, both on justice reform initiatives, but also on violence reduction strategies. We work very closely with both Indianapolis and Oakland. Kat and Tony, close colleagues. And I spent about a decade working inside of the system, the juvenile justice system in Washington, D.C., New York, and in Oakland. In all of those areas, really worked around our data management, developing our data capacity. And two of those places brought on a new data management information system. And our work, both in Oakland and in Indianapolis, includes what we like to call data-driven performance management, really deciding on goals of a violence reduction strategy and trying to meet those goals, but collecting data and metrics to see where we are. And so in the city of Oakland, every single Friday, there's a meeting with the mayor's office and the police department and the Department of Violence Prevention to measure where we are with the strategy. Every month in Indianapolis, there's a meeting with the mayor, the Office of Public Health and Safety, the police chief, to see where we are and the goals that we selected for ourselves. Both cities, in Oakland, apricot is how those reports are generated. And in Indy, they will be. Tony, who's the deputy director and really leads this strategy in Indianapolis, I jokingly call him, he's a data analyst on the side because he does a lot around data collection. And so I actually want to just turn right into the question I'm going to but can you talk about what your data reality was when you got there, Tony? That means but can you talk about what you found when you all launched the bomb production strategy and the Indy Peace Fellowship being the services component of that? What the data reality was, and then where you all are now, and then Kat's similar question, and I'll jump in with additional pieces since I know both we've worked together in both cities. But
I think I understood most of the question that David had. I know he's breaking up because he's not quite in a good signal area. But when we built out the gun violence reduction strategy here in the city and Indy Peace, the level of data that we were wanting to collect versus the level of data that we needed to collect was vastly different. We originally had a Salesforce platform that we would use to collect the data on what we call our fellows, our participants into our program, collect data on them, do case notes with them, barrier busters and things like that. We started to move away from that, and we grew from a team of about 5 people to a team of 55 people in a matter of probably David would agree, probably about 2 weeks to a month. We grew that quickly. So a lot of the stuff that we did data-wise was building out at the beginning what our forms would look like and the things that we needed to track. We have changed that over the years to really hone in on and collect more detailed information. So when it comes to conflict mediations that our violence interrupters are doing in the city, not just collecting, oh, they did a violence mediation or interruption, but really collecting and asking them to give more detail when it comes to what specifically you did, specific areas that they were seeing more often than not, and making sure that we are collecting those versus what we just kind of initially thought, hey, an argument, or hey, this is what they're going to be facing. Through the conversations we had with them and while we were doing the first few months, really honing in on what it looks like. It's not just an argument, it's an argument that is a domestic situation that we want to follow up with our domestic violence champions that we have. It's an argument between youth and a basketball game and not needing guns or anything like that, a quick, easy mediation that they can do with those 2 individuals. Or it's being at a crime scene and talking with a family and family members, not counting those as mediations, but working through what that would be collected as and trying to see how that goes. I will say 2.5 years into the program, I think we still figure out some new things that we need to track and some new things that we're looking at when it comes to the data that we're collecting. But we're getting closer and closer to fully rolling out Apricot. With 50 people, it's a little hard to roll out a program like Apricot, especially with licensures and things like that. It costs a lot of money with that. So right now, what we will be rolling out is that our violence interrupters and our outreach workers within our program in NDPs will be using the Connect portal. And so really just the opportunity for us to collect the reports, the weekly reports summarizing what they did, but then also the detailed reports that they're doing at incident scenes, outreach into the communities, canvassing, and things like that. We're actually going to be able to collect those on a database versus what we do now, which is stacks of paper. And I'm sure I have stacks of these reports in my office right now. But everything we do right now is stacks of paper. To also getting the life coaches to fully have access to Apricot as a whole, where they can then track all the work that they're doing with the fellows, the very high-risk individuals that we've identified in this city, and highlighting not only the basic information of these individuals and demographics, but schooling and education, work, opportunities that they have, and then also goals that they're working towards and accomplishing, tracking their milestones in Apricot, items to try and identify how they're moving along in the program, tracking their progress in their cognitive behavioral therapy program that they do. And so the life coach side is going to be a lot more intricate. And so finally, the hope is in the next couple of weeks, we're going to fully roll this out to everybody, and we can then be able to truly express how much we love Apricot outside of handwritten paperwork.
And if I could just jump in, thank you, Tony. If I can just jump in on a quick piece, because I think because of the connection, I short shifted, tried to be quick, just on the violence intervention work. And just so everybody's clear, both in Oakland and in Indianapolis, there is an initiative to identify the individuals who are the highest risk of being involved in gun violence. And that's a data-driven process. And then to engage them very intensively with life coaches and outreach workers and violence interrupters. And all of that activity is tracked: how many people are referred, how many people are contacted, how many people are enrolled in life coaching, how many touches they have, the life plan that is going on, outcomes that they achieve. And so both of these cities are doing an extraordinary job in tracking that and reporting that, and ultimately in doing the work of reducing gun violence. And so, Kat, I know you are in charge of the data in the city of Oakland. And so just can you talk about kind of what you walked into? And I know Oakland had a deeper history of a former database. And again, right now we're just basically talking about data management and collection, but can you talk about what you walked into and what you have now?
Sure. And just to describe a little bit about the Department of Violence Prevention here. So we do a few things in addition to the focused deterrence work that David was talking about, and that I believe Tony does as well. We also give out grants to about 60 or 30 different nonprofits. We have 60 different grants that we disperse. And so we do have our own internal team of life coaches and violence interrupters. And then we also fund like almost 200 staff positions at all these different agencies. And we also work on gender-based violence as well. So we fund work ranging from life coaching and employment and some of the elements that David and Tony were talking about, but also hotlines and bedside advocacy work, et cetera. And so I've been here for about 3 years almost. And I used to work for one of the agencies that was a grantee of the Department of Violence Prevention. And so was used to using the data system that we had prior to Apricot from the user side and the grantee side. So when I came in, the department had been using a pretty old system that wasn't really serving us very much. We had been using it for almost 10 years, and it essentially just tracked case management notes, groups and classes. And so it was more than paper. It was better than just paper, but it honestly was not giving us what we needed. There was no ability to track like crisis response information, shooting and homicide response, any sort of service type that was different than traditional like case management. And so what was really appealing to us was the customizability of Apricot and the ability to build it out to what our programs are, because violence prevention and intervention is a pretty cutting edge field. And I think that the cities that are doing this are on the forefront of building out what this work looks like and what the data capture will be like and how we talk about it. So yes, I can talk about how we procured Apricot and that whole process, but maybe I'll leave that for more of the implementation questions. But Tony, I wish you luck with your implementation coming up soon. It's bringing me back. I remember that feeling.
Thank you, Kat. So a couple of things, and again, we can just maybe start with you, Kat, and then Tony to follow up. Can you talk about what your greatest data needs are right now? And can you talk about that in kind of three ways, right? What is DVPs? What are your for Oakland? What are your funded organizations? And can you talk a little bit about that, the several organizations that DVP funds, as well as having obviously your own direct service staff? And then what are the needs of your stakeholders, the city council, the safety and services oversight committee, the mayor's office? That's a lot. And then similarly, then Tony, can you just talk about the data needs of your teams, and then obviously the data that we use to report out every month to. But we can start with Kat.
Sure. Yes, so we use our data for a few different things. The central main reason that we collect data, in addition to obviously just being able to explain and describe what happens with all of the public money that funds these programs, is to be able to track deliverables and outcomes on the grants that we manage. So David asked me to name some of the organizations that we fund, so I'll just mention East Bay Asian Youth Center, the Mentoring Center, Wow Family Community Development, Tribe, Youth Alive, Family Violence Law Center, some nonprofits in Oakland that we fund. And we fund these different agencies to do different things, right? So when we set up the contracts with these agencies, we set deliverables. So examples would be number of people served, or number of service hours, or number of crisis visits performed, or number of support groups delivered, things like that. And so in the past, and I think a lot of entities still do this, folks at the end of the reporting period would just write like, we did 10 groups or something like that. And so with Apricot and measuring the progress towards deliverables, folks actually enter each group or each person or each service note, and then the system and the reports that we've built out basically aggregate that information. And so it really helps us with just being able to monitor grant performance and making sure that the agencies are doing what we're paying them to do. Then David was mentioning the council and Safety and Services Oversight Commission and other public bodies that we report to. So as folks can probably imagine, we get lots of inquiries and questions about what these dollars are going towards, how many people we're serving, what is the demographic breakdown, how many shootings have you responded to in this council district or zip code, or things like that. And so we definitely really rely on the data to be able to answer those questions quickly. And then lastly, we work with a research and evaluation partner right now is Urban Institute, in the past was Mathematica. And so being able to collect this data allows us to be able to work with these entities to evaluate our programs, to really look at what are these programs doing and what the impact is. I think like we've gotten very good at measuring what we do and like counting how many things we've done. But really like the core purpose of it is why, and like did all of these services, did all of this funding result in a decrease in arrests, result in a decrease in shootings or homicides, result in a decrease in victimization and other outcome metrics like that, including employment, education, and how is it really making people's lives better?
Yeah, my data needs currently are a fully functional online data collection program. No, so when we do data collecting, we collect data specifically for monthly meetings that we have with our mayor. And when we report out to the mayor, it's myself and also IMPD, our police department, and they report out on homicide statistics and non-fatal shooting statistics, making sure and looking at the reductions from year to date, last year to this year. But then when we look at our numbers and our data that we want to collect when it comes to talking with the mayor and updating the mayor, we look at different things. One, we highlight our fellowship program that we have. So within Indy Peace, we have different pieces within Indy Peace. We have our violence interrupters, we have our outreach workers, and then we have our life coaches. And they work with fellows, individuals that we've identified through shootings in the city, but then also group involvement and things like that, that our life coaches work with intensely day to day for a 12 to 18 month program. And so we want to collect, one, obviously, the active amount of members that we have in our program, our fellows that we have in our program, but then tracking where we got them from a referral source, what referral source we got them from, and then tracking how long they've been in the program, success of the program when it comes to how many people we have going through our cognitive behavioral therapy, how many individuals do we have employed, and then employment retention is key to track and make sure that we have individuals that are completing job readiness or employment readiness programs within the city that we know that they're attending or we're getting them set up with to attend. And then on top of that, with our fellows program, tracking how many people are graduating, but then after that, what are they doing after graduation? So we track numbers to report out to the mayor, but then we also track our successes and achievements that our fellows are doing. So we have a running list of different things that fellows are accomplishing or achieving within their time with us, but then also after that, while we still have conversations with them and everything after they've graduated from the program, tracking their successes from there too. On top of that, some basic things that the city loves for us to report out on, and the news, and the mayor, is how many conflict mediations or mediations that our interrupters are doing while they're out in the city. How many people are we serving when it comes to our outreach? So our outreach are out relentlessly pursuing these individuals that we've identified for our fellowship program. But while they're doing that, we're also conducting 90-day neighborhood stabilization plans. So we're in a specific area in our city that's being affected by gun violence heavily at the time. And we're there for 90 days straight. And then the goal is tracking how many people are we helping within that neighborhood while we're doing that neighborhood stabilization plan. And a lot of those individuals are individuals that will never come to our fellowship program. They're not individuals that meet the criteria, our risk levels, our risk factors that we have. And so tracking how many of those individuals are we connecting to services within our city, bringing community services, community organizations to that neighborhood during the time that we're there to get services to those individuals, so they're not having to try and find transportation or even just walk in the door at that community organization, but bringing them out to the community. And so tracking numbers from there, tracking individuals that we talk with while we're doing these neighborhood stabilization plans that actually do qualify for our program, that did not come through a shooting review or come through any referral process from our police department or anywhere like that, that we're tracking those numbers as well to see how many people we are bringing into this program from doing the neighborhood outreach that we're doing. And then we also track our community safety meetings. So our call-ins, we call them community safety meetings in our city. We actually have one tonight. But we track the numbers of participants that come through that program that then get into our fellowship program, enrolled into our fellowship program, and the individuals that don't, and tracking that with probation and our supervision agencies to see individuals that get in our program, what's the success rate of those individuals, and then individuals that don't get into our program, what are the outcomes of those individuals. And so those are several different things that we track on top of then tracking. For us, we track directly things that we use internally to kind of identify zip codes and areas that we're going to go to within our city that need the support and the help from us.
It looks like David dropped off, but I'm happy to talk a little bit about a few of the things that we've focused on a lot.
Perfect. Yeah, we also have some questions in the chat. Yeah, okay. Questions in the chat regarding some things that were mentioned that we might want to just tackle right here while we have them. As like a little intermission here. Kathy in the Q&A asked two great questions. I think the first one is pointed to you, Tony. Kathy asked, what stages and activities are involved in a 90-day neighborhood stabilization program?
That is a good question. So our 90-day neighborhood stabilization plan is something that after about a year and a half of doing the work we were doing, we started kind of coming up with the idea and fully rolled it out this year. And so the first 30 days of the 90 days, obviously before that, we identified the location that we want to go to. Right now we're doing these quarterly. So the quarter before we go into this neighborhood, we're identifying the zip code that is being affected heavily by homicides, non-fatal shootings, and shots fired. And when we identify our top 3 zip codes, we then do our plan for our 90-day neighborhood stabilization to go to each zip code. So we have a team of individuals that goes to each zip code. First 30 days is our violence interrupters going out, individuals that we have hired from the city, from these areas, to come and do the work as a violence interrupter in our city as a credible messenger. And so those individuals go to that zip code, and within that zip code identify areas that really need the support that we can give. And so right now it's been, we find a apartment complex that is being affected by gun violence, affected by just violence, period. An apartment complex that usually the owners of and the leasing offices are not here in the city and they're not from this city. And so there's really no help that individuals can get from their leasing office. And so our violence interrupters go into that area, and for the first 30 days are just flooding that area regularly, going out there and talking with neighbors, talking with anybody that will come out and talk with them, they go out with door hangers and canvass the area, saying who we are and what our purpose is and what we do, has a number on it that they can call if they wanted to talk to us or say anything. A lot of times this is when our violence interrupters find out where the trouble really is in the apartment complex, right? And so then they plan to start kind of focusing more heavy in that area, trying to come across the individuals that are causing issues or the individuals that need the services. They take food boxes into these areas on a regular basis from community organizations. They'll go and pick up a bunch of food boxes and take them over there. The second 30 days, they start to bring in our outreach workers. Our outreach workers start coming in. They start providing other services. They start bringing bus passes and sometimes information when it comes to certain community organizations. They're going to go and do surveys with all the neighbors. In this time, they'll do a pop-up barbecue to get people to come out and kind of talk to the team. And then through surveys, trying to find out what the needs really are, right? Instead of flooding that area with a bunch of different services, finding out what truly the specific ones are that are needed in that area. And then the third 30 days is even more outreach going on. Outreach, violence interrupters are going out there. They're doing more pop-ups. They might do a stop the bleed training out in that community. They might do a Narcan training out in the community. They're going to bring gun locks out to the community and hand out gun locks to anybody that would like a gun lock. And then they're going to do a big outreach, resource fair. They're going to bring all these community organizations that they know provide the services that are needed in that area at the time based off of the surveys. And they bring those individuals out there for a big end of the 90-day celebration where basically it's a resource fair for all the individuals within that apartment complex to come out and talk to all these different entities and find out what their services are, start signing up for services. And then that neighborhood or that area stays on what we would call the rotation, where violence interrupters and outreach workers are gonna, after the 90 days, still go out there, still check on people, still talk to people. They're just not gonna be intensely out there like they are during the 90-day stabilization.
Awesome. Thank you for the in-depth review of your 90-day process. Very interesting. And it's great to hear that after the 90 days are up, you all still make an effort to go back out there and kind of check on people and the folks in that community. So we also had another question come through, and I will pose this both to both of you, but I'll give Kat the chance to go first to give Tony a little bit of a breath there. But they asked what issues you do encounter with your reporting and confidentiality and what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good question and just a big topic and thing to think about. So when we procured Apricot in 2022, we had to get various approvals from city bodies, and one of the approvals that we had to get was from the city's Privacy Advisory Commission. And so through that process, I think we went to them like 4 or 5 times, so it took a while, a few months, and what we were essentially doing was developing a use policy that was approved, that covered data privacy, data security, who can use the system, what are the protections, what happens if it's misused, what data is visible to who, etc. And so we laid that out all really clearly and had multiple iterations. And that is given to people when they start using Apricot, and they confirm that they've signed it. And it's definitely a big topic because we have a network. We are essentially the coordinators of a collaborative of many different nonprofits. And so many of these organizations are serving the same people. And so one of the things that was a huge change for us in using Apricot from our old system is being able to know that and being able to know the unique number of people served. Because when all of the agencies are using the same data system, but with a lot of guardrails set up around privacy and different roles in terms of who can access what information, there's no duplicate records. There's only one record for each person. So say I, for example, was getting life coaching services from one organization, and I was getting employment services from another organization, and I was getting therapeutic support services from another organization. Cat Gray will be in there once, and all three of those organizations can see that I am or have been in the past served by those three different places, but they cannot see any details or any sort of notes or anything like that about what those services are. And so it does allow for some collaboration, like to be able to reach out or be able to say to the participant, like, I see you're working with this agency or whatever. But the details of that interaction and those services are all private and confidential. And then within that, there's also referrals within the system and things like that. So I could go down a huge rabbit hole there, but yeah, I'll leave that.
Yeah, and Tony, I'd love to hear kind of your experience, on privacy and data collection, and what kind of issues you might have encountered in your time.
Yeah, so Indie Peace is a unique setup that we have within the nation. We're probably one of the only ones that utilize everything within one location. When I say that, Indie Peace is a city program originally funded by ARPA funding that then is now fully funded in the city with the consolidated city taxpayer money. As of this year, we are fully funded. And with that, though, we have a unique opportunity where we are a government agency that is partnering with a nonprofit organization. So the Office of Public Health and Safety, my division, which is the Community Violence Reduction Division, partners with Indy Public Safety Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization in the city. And together we have the Indy Peace program. And so the data that we all have, the work that's being done and the data that we collect all comes from employees of ours. And so where some cities see violence interrupters or outreach workers being from different organizations and having to have maybe MOUs or contracts with other organizations and things, we have all that housed within our office. And so when it comes to data collecting and who owns what data, is all owned by the city through the city's contract that we have with Indy Public Safety Foundation. Everything comes through, and so we work closely with our IT people, our ISA people, to make sure that Apricot's going to work correctly with our systems over at the city. And so when it comes to sharing of information, participants getting services from one organization to the other organization, not all organizations in the city use Apricot, and not all Apricots connect and talk with each other like maybe we would hope one day they do. We just need to get it better for ourselves first. Some of the things when I think of issues we run into with confidentiality and data is talking about data to the media or to city county councilors or the community. When you talk about the numbers that you're reporting out on and you're talking about the data that you're collecting, a lot of times people want names attached with that. People want specific examples to understand the efficacy of the program and make sure that the program is doing what they say they're doing. We do a really good job of keeping people's names out of stories or out of things unless we talk with them and they say that they're okay with it. So a lot of our fellows are always, we're going to keep their names out of the media, out of the conversations that we have when we talk about situations and people accomplishing things. But we do a really good job of also highlighting fellows that we have in our program that are accomplishing things as well. With our Healing Hearts program that we did, which was art therapy, we were able to highlight that in the media and do a press release. And we had a couple of fellows that really wanted to talk about the program and what it meant to them. When we graduate our individuals, we do video interviews with them and their life coach and provide their names. And so when we show that and highlight that on our YouTube page or social media or to the city county council, that's our way of getting out there and showing, hey, these are individuals that really have been in our program that are learning. And we haven't really ran into much when it comes to confidentiality issues being breached. The work that we do, we make sure that our individuals are safe at all times. Our violence interrupters do work that at any point in time they could get killed over because of anything that may get out there. The work they do, somebody could slip up and say one small thing and anybody can take that differently. And so we make sure that with those individuals that we have, their identity is up to them if they want to acknowledge who they are and what they're doing. We don't want to just throw out who we have working for us and stuff. So trying to keep that under wraps. But when it comes to the data itself and the confidentiality and things like that, luckily we have it where it's all within one entity. So we're not really sharing much of the in-depth detail of the data that we have with anybody outside of our organization.
Yes, that's, I'm sure, very handy for you all to have it all within one and keeps things a lot more simple, I'm sure. We had another question actually come in through. Kathy asked if all violence interrupting programs or intervention programs are the same. And so I posed that question to you, Kat, and then Tony, I'll have you follow up. But are they all the same? And if not, can you talk about maybe some of the differences that you've seen with some programs and how they're run?
Sure. No, they're definitely not all the same. I think that a major standard that many cities follow is the focused deterrence model, which is, generally speaking, law enforcement identifying individuals who are at very high risk of gun violence and then having a partner who can offer services to support people in seeking safety and getting what they need so that they have a different life. And those types of communications that are had occur in like custom notifications or call-ins where folks will work together to do that. And then after that, there can be life coaching services that go into the different types of goals that that person might have, and is pretty intensive daily contact with that person. So that is like a well-known model. But then also the violence interrupters and doing violence mediations and things like that is something that we do. But hearing Tony talk about it is different than how we do it. Like I heard Tony say that in the neighborhood stabilization plan, for the first 30 days, the violence interrupters go out to that neighborhood, and then for the next 30 days, the outreach workers come in. And I was like, we somewhat use those names relatively similarly or have in the past. And so I know different cities use these terms interchangeably, and there's all sorts of variation in program models across the country.
Yeah, I think when back in 2020, I would say yes, violence interrupters and this kind of work is all the same across the board. But over the years, I definitely would say it varies. I think the the bones and the structure of the work that we all do across the nation when it comes to reducing violence and gun violence in particular is the same. But you're going to tailor it to how your city needs you to do it. We work with NICJR regularly. They're the ones that taught us how to do what we're doing way back in the day. And we're still, but we still have to tailor the structure and the the basis of what we're doing to our city and what the city needs and how the city works. Every city is different across the nation when it comes to the violence and what's driving the violence. And at the same time, they're the same, if that makes sense. It's the same thing, but different all at the same time. And so I think when we look at it, anybody in our city would hear the word peacemakers, and that's what they identify Indie Peace as, is the peacemakers. Most of the people will say that the peacemakers are the violence interrupters, and it's not true. We, out of our staff currently that we have, our violence interrupters are actually the most that we have right now. But usually when we're at full staff, it's going to be our life coaches and our outreach workers that are more staffed than our violence interrupters. We have a small team of violence interrupters, but they make magnitudes out here in the city when it comes to the work that they're doing and the support that they're giving. But yeah, I would say it varies. What the work violence interrupters do here is going to be different out in Oakland, out in DC for those that are here in DC from DC, and it's going to vary the way it runs for sure.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, like you said, cities are different. They have different causes for violence, so they do different responses. But I get what you mean when you say kind of the core of it might all be the same, despite those differences. But awesome. Yeah. And I know we're kind of coming close to time here. So I want to give folks another opportunity here. If you are interested, again, in learning more about Bonterra, learning more about some of our tools and services that both Kat and Tony were mentioning that help them collect the data that they need to report on, if you're interested in learning more about those tools, or just genuinely have a question that is better suited maybe for a one-on-one conversation, I want to launch another quick poll here. Please feel free to fill that out, and then I will have one of my colleagues reach out to you after today's session. But while folks are filling that out, I want to give everyone the opportunity to maybe put some last minute questions here in the chat. But while folks do that, Tony, Kat, thank you both so much today for your time. And this was a great panel. I feel like going in before I didn't know much about violence prevention, but I feel well equipped to answer some questions if I am ever asked anything about violence prevention. And I'm sure folks on the call feel the same. And I know we unfortunately had David drop, but thank him once we connect afterwards. I want to thank him as well for his time. But sad to hear he couldn't have stayed with us, but I know he was kind of having some spotty service, so that makes sense. But yeah, thank you both. Oh, and speak of David, David is back. There he is, there he goes. But yeah, thank you both for your time this afternoon. Oh,
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, of course. We have a last minute question coming through. And this is a really interesting one, and one that we kind of get throughout a lot of our sessions, especially with the rise of AI. But if you both could talk about how AI is affecting the future of your work, I think that would be really interesting because, yeah, that's definitely a hot topic.
Not at all. We
No?
are insulated from that. We work with folks who are on the ground, on the streets, and I think it's far off. I mean, of course, We'll use ChatGPT to write emails sometimes, I guess. That's really the most.
Would you say same for you, Tony?
Yeah, I think for us, we're not really affected by it right now. The city does a really good job, especially our ISA team, does a really good job of making sure that everybody within the city stays away from using AI when it comes to the work that we're doing and the things that we're putting out. So yeah, I would say we are away from the AI, and it's not affecting us that much right now.
Good to know. Good to know. It's definitely a hot button topic amongst a lot of different organizations. But David, yeah, we were just saying that I wanted to thank you for your time. I know you had some spotty service, but appreciate you being on the call here as well with Kat and Tony this afternoon.
First of all, my sincere apologies, everybody. The only thing that makes me feel fine is that means you heard a lot more from Kat and Tony, which was the intention. And so what might have been frustrating connection, I think sounds like it turned out to a better outcome. So thank you all. And if I don't know, I know we're toward the end. If there's any last minute questions I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any coming through here in last minute questions, but let me double check here. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any other ones coming through here. So again, thank you all for your time this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I appreciate your engagement in the chat and the really great questions that you all had. Definitely made for a great session. But we hope to see you all at our next session. Just as a reminder, again, we did record this session and that will be sent out to you later sometime next week. So be on the lookout for that. But thank you all for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you at our next session. Awesome. Bye, everyone.